Okay. Krishna, Krishna. Everything works. That's nice. More people will be coming. So I think I'll sing Jai Radha Madhava, and then more people will be here by the time that happens. Cartels? You have. Okay, good. No, I have. You want to play Mridanga? You want me to play Mridanga? Okay. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjavi Adi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjavi Adi Gopi Jana Bala Girivara Dhari Girivara Dhari Gopi Jana Bala Girivara Dhari Pijana Bala Girivara Jasodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jasodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanam Chadi Jamuna Tiravana Chadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Madhava Kunjabi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Gopi Jana Bala Girivara Dhari Gopi Jana Bala Girivara Dhari Girivara Dhari Jasodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jasodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravana Jadi Jamuna Tiravana Jadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Hari Vidagacharya Astatara Srivan His Divine Faith A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Gaur Premanandi. Seemed like a long time ago, but it wasn't so long ago. A group of us went to Haridwar, Rishikesh, and Badrinath. At least some of us made it to Badrinath. There was a group of devotees and a bus that made it halfway there. They had to stop because of mudslide. The police were blocking the roads. And they were in the bus for 28 hours. I don't know what they did for 28 hours. And then they had to go back because they couldn't clear the mudslide. But some made it. And some made it not only to Badrinath, but then Kedarnath, and then Gangotri and Yamunotri. Venturesome group. It took them a while, and through mountain trails and so forth. But the reason for discussing this topic, NaraNarayanaRishi, is this: is one of their celebrated places is in Badrinath, their ashram, but NaraNarayanaRishi's ashram. Maybe you know this from the Bhagavatam. When Krishna had his second discussion with Uddhava, well, for the first discussion, it was in Dwarka. Intuitively, because of the intimate relationship, Uddhava knew Krishna was going to leave. So in Dwarka, he went privately to see him, fell at his feet, sobbing like anything. Please don't leave me, take me with you. And that's the circumstance of Uddhava Gita, 11th canto, many chapters, Uddhava Gita. But Krishna hadn't left yet. Then later there was a plan, without all the in-between details, at Prabhas. After Krishna arranged for the entire Yadu army to destroy themselves in a circumstance. Then Balaram left and Krishna was remaining. And again, Uddhava came. Because Krishna had, from Dwarka, Krishna had sent him to go to Badrinath. He said that when I appeared in this world, one of the places I wanted to give my association was to NaraNarayanaRishi and their associates in their ashram, but I didn't go. So you please go on my behalf. Carry my message, all this message that he had spoken at Uddhava Gita. And he got partway there, but he didn't make it. He came back. He was feeling too much separation. And that's where he met Krishna at Prabhas. And in that setting, there's a very nice description. Krishna was leaning against a young banyan tree. Maitreya just happened to be there and hear the whole discussion between Krishna and Uddhava. And again, nice discussion. And Krishna sent him again. Please go to the ashram of NaraNarayan in Badrinath and carry my messages, give my association through you. So he left. And he eventually made it. So this is a nice painting of NaraNarayan Rishi. And there's, of course, Narada Muni and many other sages. A nice introduction to the topic of NaraNarayanaRishi is this verse from Canto 1, Chapter 2. As we know, the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, Chapter 1, it says the scene is Naimisharanya. We also visited Naimisharanya, very nice place, where Sutta spoke the Bhagavatam for the second time. And the sages headed by Shaunaka were very, very happy to hear a retelling of the Srimad Bhagavatam that Sutta had heard from Shukadeva Goswami. And it begins with their asking 6 specific questions, and the answers are found in chapters 2 and 3 of the first canto. So before he begins, Sutta begins to answering, he speaks this verse. You can say it together. It's a nice verse. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayet. So in the painting, there's Goddess Saraswati, there's Lord Narayan, of course there's the 4 Kumaras. And here's another nice painting indicating the meaning. Before reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayana, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Sutta is speaking. In Prabhupada's comment in a lecture he gave in 1972, not on this verse, but the message of this verse, as soon as people are misled in their occupational duty, I will take my incarnation, Sri NaraNarayan. They are incarnation of God, but they underwent severe penances. The NaraNarayan temple is there in Badrikashram in the Himalayas. People go there to show their respects to Narayan Rishi. So God or his representative comes always to help us, to deliver us from the wrong path of sense gratification. A little bit of the background of their appearance. This is a carving. Narayana is on the left and Nara is on the right. This is a carving from very old days, and a more modern, not so modern, but more modern painting, where it's stated, first canto, chapter 3, verse number 28. NaraNarayan, Kurma, and Rishabh display detachment. This is a section of the first canto, chapter 3, describing incarnations of the Lord. And there's specific features of these 3: detachment. Kurma, Rishabh, and NaraNarayan. The incarnations are said to have displayed only a part of Lord Vishnu's knowledge, pastimes, powers, and other opulences. Nara Rishi entered Arjuna and therefore Arjuna is an Avesh incarnation of NaraRashi. Lord Krishna, however, is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Sattvata Tantra, description of different kinds of incarnations. So Arjuna has a particular relationship, just as NaraNarayanaRishi are always together. Arjuna and Krishna are always together. Arjuna manifesting or embodying the Nara Rishi feature of those two. And here's a little bit of the background of how they made their appearance in this world. This is from Bhagavatam 11th Canto, Chapter 4. NaraNarayanaRishi, who is, notice it's singular, who is perfectly peaceful and is the best of sages, was born as the son, singular, of Dharma and his wife Murti, the daughter of Daksha. So Daksha had, as we know, many daughters. And different daughters were given to different qualified husbands to marry. And one of those daughters was Murti. One of the daughters was Sati. That was a big problem between Sati and her father. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments on this verse. Sarva Gunotpati means that she was the source of the Lord, who is endowed with all auspicious qualities. She became the mother of NaraNarayanaRishi. Murti, another name of NaraNarayanaRishi, a form of Shuddha Sattva, should be understood to be the Shakti who manifests the Lord. Nice? So she's not just a jiva, she's in the category of Shakti Tattva. And from the second canto Bhagavatam, there's in chapter 7 of the second canto, there's another place where there's a list of avatars. The Lord appeared as Narayana and Nara in Murti, the wife of Dharma. Two forms were born. The forms possessed extraordinary power of austerity. Again, it's the feature of these two personalities, although the two personalities are sometimes identified in the singular, sometimes identified in the plural. Two forms, one entity. That's one way to look at it. Canto 4, Chapter 1. On the occasion of the appearance of Narayana, the entire world was full of joy. Everyone's mind became tranquil, and thus, in all directions, the air, the rivers, and mountains became pleasant. There's just a collection of different places, primarily from the Srimad Bhagavatam, where NaraNarayanaRishi are mentioned. Same Canto 4, Chapter 1. In the heavenly planets, bands began to play, and they showered flowers from the sky. The pacified sages chanted Vedic prayers. The denizens of heaven, known as the Gandharvas and Kinnaras, sang. The beautiful damsels of the heavenly planets danced, and in this way, at the time of the appearance of Narayana, all signs of good fortune were visible. Just at that time, great demigods like Brahma also offered their respectful prayers. And we hear again about Narayan in 4th Canto, Chapter 1. Maitreya is narrating this to Vidura. That's the painting. By the way, we had some discussion already. This ashram where Maitreya engaged in austerities was in Haridwar. We visited the place. And this discussion that makes up like 13 chapters of Canto 4, is Maitreya to Uddhava, Maitreya to Vidura, excuse me. O Vidura, thus the demigods worshipped with prayers the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appearing as the sage Narayana. The Lord glanced upon them with mercy and then departed for Gandhamadana mountain or hill. So it's just a collection of verses about their appearance and their mother and so forth. From Mahabharata, there's some other explanation of how they made their appearance. During the era of Swayambhuva Manu, there was a great disturbance created by a demon named Dambodbhava. Doesn't look like a nice fellow. Dambodbhava. This demon performed severe austerity and was successful in propitiating Suryadev. Dambodbhava was asked to take a benediction. Grant me the benediction of immortality. Sounds familiar, right? Sorry, Charlie. No immortality. Suryadev replied, even I am not immortal. I can't give what I don't have. The demon thought of tricking his lord by getting immortality sanctioned by another way, and he asked for the following boon. Clever. Hiranyakashipu tried his too. Bestow upon me the protection of 1,000 armors or kavachas. If anyone comes to fight with me and tries to penetrate my defense through these armors, for every armor, the opponent has to perform austerity for 1,000 years. Then he has to perform austerity for another 1,000 years. And with every armor being destroyed, the opponent should also die. Backdoor way of trying to become immortal. That was his benediction he wanted from the sun god. So Suryadev said, so be it. Now Suryadev knew very well the demon was a demon. He's going to misuse the boon, but he was bound by, he made a pledge, and so he granted the boon. After getting what he wanted, the demon, now known as Sahasra Kavacha, 1,000 Kavachas, started terrorizing the entire universe and perpetrated untold suffering on the living entities. That's the background behind Murti. So Murti, seeing the suffering of living entities, she made some prayers to Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And her prayers were heard. The Supreme Lord Krishna appeared in front of Mother Murti and King Dharma and assured that he will soon mitigate the suffering of the living entities. The Supreme Lord appeared as the twin sons of Murti and King Dharma and became known as NaraNarayana. Watch what happens. While NaraNarayanaRishi were performing penances, the demon Dambodbhava, who is now known as Sahasra Kavacha, came to their hermitage in a challenging demoniac mood, wanted to fight. Immediately, Nara came out and stood in front of that demon. Dambodbhava to NaraRishi, how dare you stand in front of me? No one has ever dared to stand in front of me like this. Proud fellow. Do you know that I am protected by 1,000 armors And as long as these armors are there, I am invincible. Moreover, the condition for every armor to be broken is that my opponent has to first perform penance for 1,000 years and then fight with me for 1,000 years. Nara said, no problem. Someone else is performing penance, and I am ready for answering your challenge right now. So they started having battle that lasted for 1,000 years. And the first armor was destroyed. But simultaneously, NaraRishi dropped down as if dead as part of the pastime. But guess what? Immediately, NaraYanaRishi came out of the hermitage, and instead of going to the demon, he went to his twin brother, lying apparently dead, and chanted Sanjivani mantra and brought NaraRishi back to life. He's outsmarting the demon. This time, NaraYanaRishi told his brother to go and perform penance, while he himself fought with the demon for 1,000 years. And they went through this for a few times. Again, this time, after 1,000 years, the second armor was destroyed, and apparently NaraYanaRishi dropped down as a matter of a pastime. This time, NaraRishi came out, revived NaraYanaRishi, who then accepted the role of performing penance for 1,000 years, while Nara fought the demon for 1,000 years. You get the pattern. This happened 999 times. When the demon had lost his armor, his last armor, the demon fled for his life. He ran away and hid himself behind his worshipable sun god. Not good enough. NaraYanaRishi, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, instructed the sun god, please do not give shelter to Dambodhava. What to do? He's my devotee. NaraYanaRishi became very upset with the response of the sun god. Since you have disobeyed my instruction by giving shelter to such an impostor, both you and this demon will have to take birth on earth. The personality who was then born on earth as a result of this was Karna. Ooh. That is why we see that Karna had a split personality. Yes? On the one hand, he was charitable. That aspect was derived from the sun god. When he was asked to give his armor, he gave his armor. On the other hand, he was so demoniac that he had repeatedly insulted all the magnanimous devotees, like this business of disrobing Draupadi, etc., etc., etc. He was very involved in that shenanigan. This aspect of Karna, his being proud, arrogant, and hurting others with his harsh speech, was due to his being an incarnation of Dambodhava. Interesting, huh? Karna was thus born with an armor like the demon Sahasra Kavacha, who was defeated by NaraNarayanaRishi 999 times. Since Arjuna was to fight with Karna in the Kurukshetra battlefield, Indra, Arjuna's father, was very anxious to take away Karna's armor because of the conditions associated with it. For this reason, Indra took the guise of a Brahmana and begged charity from Karna, who then cut off his armor and gave it to Indra, disguised as a Brahmana. Lord Parshuram confirmed the divinity of NaraNarayanaRishi after Lord Krishna's peace proposal in the assembly of the Kurus. So here's that history. Having carefully listened to Krishna's appeal for peace, the kings were speechless. No one could argue with anything he said. Only Duryodhana found faults with Krishna. There he is. Karna pointed his finger at Krishna. And he looked at Krishna with a sly smile. When Krishna finished speaking, Parshuram addressed the assembly. All eyes rested upon him, and his voice rang out around the hall. He told the assembly a story about the ancient king Dambodbhava and his being defeated by NaraNarayanaRishi. He also recounted how Nara pulled up a handful of grass and, imbuing it with mystic power, hurled it at the king and his army. The grass transformed into razor-sharp steel shafts that sliced off the ears and noses of all the soldiers, finally defeating Dambodbhava. Parshuram continued. Nara's feat was wonderful. Narayana is capable of still greater deeds. Those two high-souled rishis are now present as Arjuna and Krishna. Do not try to face them in battle like the vain Dambodbhava. Pretty strong. O heroes, do not fall victim to these vices and lose your lives. No one within the three worlds can defeat Arjuna, and Janardana exceeds him. Make peace with them and do what is good for yourselves and for the whole world. This is Krishna came with his peace offer. Duryodhana insulted, besides saying no, he insulted Krishna. Parshuram gave them some very strong words. Now there's an exchange that you may know between Cupid and NaraNarayanaRishi. By the way, this whole presentation is in 3 parts, and we're only going to do the first third of the 3 parts, and then the other second third was another evening. But it's very interesting, isn't it? King Indra became fearful, thinking that NaraNarayanaRishi would become so powerful by severe penances and seize Indra's heavenly kingdom. He gets nervous like this from time to time. And then he does very, very strange things. So this time, knowing the transcendental glories of the incarnation, Narayan, he sent Cupid and his associates to Badrikashram. So there's the painting that shows Cupid with heavenly damsels doing their thing and trying to beguile NaraNarayanaRishi, but it didn't work. 11th Canto, Chapter 4. As the charming breezes of spring created a most sensuous atmosphere, Cupid himself attacked the Lord with arrows in the form of irresistible glances of beautiful women. NaraNarayanaRishi spoke laughingly to Cupid and his followers, who were trembling before him. Do not fear, O mighty Madana. O wind god and wives of the demigods, rather, please accept these gifts I am offering you and kindly sanctify my ashram by your presence. When NaraNarayanaRishi thus spoke, eradicating the fear of the demigods, they bowed down their heads with shame and offered prayers. And there's a long set of prayers. So that's the, as you see in the background, that's the main temple at Badrikashram, painting of it. And there's NaraNarayanaRishi, and there's the damsels, and there's their prayers. While the demigods were thus praising the Supreme Lord, the all-powerful Lord suddenly manifested before their eyes many women who were astoundingly gorgeous, decorated with fine clothes and ornaments, and all faithfully engaged in the Lord's service. Continuing, when the followers of the demigods gazed upon the fascinating mystic beauty of the women created by NaraNarayan and smelled the fragrance of their bodies, the minds of these followers became bewildered. Indeed, upon seeing the beauty and magnificence of such women, the representatives of the demigods were completely diminished in their own opulence. And continuing, 11th Canto, Chapter 4. The Supreme Lord of Lords then smiled slightly and told the representatives of heaven who were bowing down before him, singular, please choose one of these women. Whomever you find suitable for you, she will be the ornament of the heavenly planets. Vibrating the sacred syllable Om, the servants of the demigod selected Urvashi, the best of the Apsaras, placing her in front of them out of respect. They returned to the heavenly planets. So they were, Indra's plan was defeated, but in a very, no bloody battle, just, he displayed opulence that bewildered their mind and made them very quiet. Now there's a nice pastime that it's going to take a while to narrate. We're not going to get into the whole thing. There's a little bit of background about Markandeya Rishi, and NaraNarayanaRishi. And here's a little bit of the sketch of the life of Markandeya Rishi. Now, I'm now at slide 54, and there's 135 slides. So we're not going to get too far. But this is a little background. We didn't go into this when we were in preparing to go to Badrinath on Haridwar. This has been created since then, so you're getting to see it for the first time. Markandeya was born at a place by the name Markand Makri, and it's in Himachal Pradesh. And where it is, it's shown with a little red dot. In the lower right corner, there's a map that shows the Markanda River arising from the roots of a gigantic fig tree. That's the history. And from the Markandeya Purana, there's this description. When he was 5 years old, already he started penance to please Lord Shiva. He performed penance for the next 7 years. When Yamaraj came to take him, like death when he's only 5 plus 7, so he's a young boy, Shiva warded him off and gave Markandeya the status of a Chiranjiva when he's still just a young boy. Now, we discussed this a little bit. Let's say it again. Sometimes the word Chiranjiva or Chiranjivi is translated as immortal. There's no such thing. Because according to Bhagavad Gita, anything that's born must die. So he was born, so he has to die. But he's given the status of being able to live for as long as creation exists. That's pretty long. That means yuga, lives of one life of Brahma. And in each day of Brahma is 1,000 yuga cycles times 30 days to a month. And so it's a lot of time. Not eternal, but a very, very long time. And Lord Shiva granted him that status. So this is a painting depicting, there's Yamaraj, who's come with his stick. We heard this in the Damodar Leela, the stick of death. And Lord Shiva interfered and saved his life. From the Narasingha Purana, that was the Markandeya Purana, Markandu and his wife prayed to Lord Shiva for a son. Markandu and his wife prayed to Lord Shiva for a son. When Maharishi Bhrigu instructed young Markandeya Rishi, who became a descendant in the Bhrigu line. So here he is on the banks of the river Bhadra. This is from this Purana. Lord Vishnu granted status of a Chiranjeevi to Markandeya Rishi. So it's two different accounts. What does that mean? It could mean two different creations. That's one explanation, quite possible. And there are 7 personalities well known as having such a long life. Some sources say that he is the disciple of Mahamuni Vyas. So again, that could be different days of Brahma or something. One of the Puranas is named after him, Markandeya Purana, and the Rishi became Chiranjeeva at adolescence, and he never grew older. So one account is that Vishnu, the other is that Lord Shiva granted this status. Or now it's slide number 62 out of 135. So I think this might be a good place to break. Now, this is a detail. I'll cover a few more slides. A few more details. In this map, it shows, it depicts at least the location of this celebrated fig tree that is said to be still alive. And it's at the point of the origin of this Markanda River. So I saw, and when we went to Badrinath, where the mouth or the flow of the Ganga comes out of the mountain. Have any of you seen that? It's really amazing. There's like the backdrop of Badrinath is mountains, and then you go up and 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 up by there's a little trail, and one can find the cave that Vyasadeva dictated Mahabharata to Ganesh, and then there's the Ganesh's cave. You keep walking up and up and up, and it's easy to get out of breath because the oxygen is so thin. And you get up a little bit higher, and there's a big wall of mountains, and right from the wall of the mountains is this gushing flow of water. It's not just a trickle, it's a river coming out of the water. And it just keeps coming out of this mountain side. So what is it? Because, if it's glacier water, how long is it going to take for the glacier to melt? And then what happens when the glacier melts? It's not just glacier water. It's the Ganga descending from the heavenly realm. I don't know what scientists have to say about it, but it's pretty awesome. So it just, as the Ganga comes out, of Badrik Ashram in that area, in Badrinath at least. So similarly, this other river comes from the ground near a fig tree. Now, I haven't seen the place, but I saw this other place, and so I take it for granted it's for real. There's an ancient temple in this very same place. At Jagannath Puri, there's a temple of Markandeya Rishi called Markandeshwara Temple. And this is a photograph of the place. The main altar of Lord Jagannath is surrounded by 8 temples called the Ashta Stambhus, and this Markandeshwara is one of the 8 in the perimeter of the Jagannath temple. And there's some carvings within the temple. At the banks of the Wine Ganga River in Maharashtra, there's another such temple. And there's another such temple in Karnataka. And there's another such temple from Varanasi in a village named Kaiti at the confluence of these 2 rivers, Gomati and Ganga. There's another temple dedicated to Markandeya Mahadev. And inside the temple, there's a Shivalinga and a Markandeya Muni deity. That's where that arrow is pointing to, the Markandeya Murti, Markandeya Muni Murti, and then there's the Shivalinga. Here's a map depicting where that place is. Markandeya Rishi Ashram in Chandigarh. There's another place. So I think this is the spot I want to break, because it's going to go into some further details of ashrams where Markandeya Rishi met NaraNarayan. The painting is depicting a story we're going to hear with part 2, where Markandeya meets NaraNarayan Rishi. And there's 2 possible places where that might happen. We'll hear those places, and we'll hear about the meeting of the 2. A virtual visit and some historical narration in relation to NaraNarayana Rishi. They're celebrated forms of the Lord, specifically, as we heard, known for their austerity. But, one might ask, what's the personality of Godhead doing austerities for? Because he's the personality of Godhead, or his incarnation, so why the austerities? The answer is to set an example. It's not that one has to do what NaraNarayana Rishi did, or the persons who reside in their ashram did, in order to achieve Krishna consciousness. But the principle of voluntarily accepting austerity for the purpose of pleasing the personality of Godhead is a principle of Vedic sacrifice. And it can be something very simple, and it can be something very extreme, as sometimes we heard these nice descriptions of the Saptarishis and the austerities that they performed. They're very, very extended and severe. But the principle is simple. The form is different, but the principle is controlling the mind and senses. And controlling the mind and senses may mean to voluntarily restrain oneself from what would be ordinary life of senses and sense objects mixing. An interesting first time experience in my life as a Hare Krishna devotee. The flight from I was in Chicago, came to Dallas, and the flight attendant, interesting, and her way going through, taking drink orders and all that, said, "Are you with a religious order?" I said, "Yes." "Are you a monk?" "Yes." "What order?" I said, "Hare Krishna." "I thought so." "And have you taken a vow that you can't speak?" I said, "Obviously, I can speak. I can take." But, it was just quick. But our vow, the austerity, is not don't speak, although some persons may do like that. Don't speak. Ours is don't speak nonsense, or you speak only, you use the power of speech or the power of anything in service to the Supreme. And that's the austerity. Nothing else. How is that accomplished? Not just accomplished by a rule. Anyone knows that. Rules, you can do rules for a while and then something else happens. Conditioned souls, something else happens. So therefore, as the principle of bhakti, for the purpose, as we heard today about the Damodar Lila, the bondage that's more powerful than anything is the bondage of love. Because when one is bound by love, then you don't do anything other than for the pleasure of the beloved, when it's genuine love. And you can practice it or sadhana in that direction. That's sadhana bhakti. But as it matures, then as bhakti matures, then there isn't anything else. There's only one thing. Yavasayatmika buddhi ekeha krudanandana, in the language of Bhagavad Gita. That buddhi yoga is the same as bhakti yoga, which means for the satisfaction of Krishna only. That's high. So we can go in the direction by sadhana. But when we're engaged in sadhana, we should be mindful of what the purpose is. Just like in the car that we rode in, Tesla has this really nice screen. You can, but you have to put in the destination. The GPS will show you where you are on the highway, but not tell you how to get to your destination unless you put in the destination. They'll show you you're moving along, but you have to know the destination. So bhakti includes knowing the destination. It's a good GPS system. It can get you to where you want to go. It may take a while, depends, in some variables, but it'll take you to where you want to go. But you have to know where you want to go. That's the bond of love. When there's only one purpose behind anything, and you don't do other things. That's the austerity. The external looks like it hurts. I can't do this and I can't do that. Somebody knows. But it's not. That's liberation, freedom from material bondage. Prabhupada calls these the regular principles of freedom. And it's pretty simple, not so complicated. You have to go to the Badrik ashram and do austerities with the yogis there. You can do that. But there's no guarantee that they're going to be successful without bhakti. And with bhakti, then they can be successful. That's the idea. It's for a certain age and a certain spirit of persons that want those kinds of benefits. And don't want the miseries of material existence. So you do the do nots. But behind the do nots is the do. That's the devotion to Krishna, devotion to the Supreme. Okay, so let's see if there's some discussion. 20 minutes to 8.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for the wonderful class. I'm still trying to digest the two personalities versus one personality. Two personality of NaraNarayanaRishi I can able to digest, but how is it one person in few situations?
It's not easy to understand, but the principle goes like this. Like Lord Chaitanya, there's this nice verse that I'm sure you know the verse, many of us know the verse. Eternally, the one entity is manifest in two forms, Radha Krishna. Radha Krishna pranaya vikriti ladini shakti asmat ekatmanav api bhuvi pura deha beta gatautau. There's one entity eternally manifest in two forms. The next line is, and that one entity manifest in one form, one entity manifest in two forms, one entity manifest in one form, is Lord Chaitanya, taking the complexion and the mood, the bhava and the duty of Radha. That's Gauranga. So, back to your question. It's not easy to understand. And so it's one entity manifest in two forms. So we can say singular because it's one entity, or he is one entity, or we can say two in two forms. So we can emphasize the oneness of the entity, or can emphasize the two-ness of the forms. One entity in two forms. So sometimes and sometimes referred to in the singular, sometimes in the plural. He or they. And it's not easy to understand. The explanation is there, but it's not easy to understand it. Okay?
Like Lord Chaitanya, like there is Radha and Krishna both.
Yes.
Like a Ladini. Like
two
a
entities
female.
in one form.
Yeah, so in Narayan, is there a female entity as well, or is there a female?
No, male.
They both are male.
Narayana and Nara.
Okay.
Arjuna.
Yeah, that was something I didn't understand. Is that like a reincarnation, or you were saying that it's an analogy kind of thing?
No.
Okay.
Are you referring now to Krishna Arjun?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, is Arjun Vishnu Tattva or Jiva Tattva? Arjuna is Jiva Tattva. Is Krishna Vishnu Tattva or Jiva Tattva? He's Vishnu Tattva. So the inseparableness, wherever Krishna appears, Arjuna appears with him. They're not appearing as twins like this. Narayana's twin sons of the two, the Dharma and his wife. They appeared as twins, kind of look like twins, but with different complexions. Not like that. But it's the oneness of the living entity as Narayan chronologically came before the appearance of Krishna and Arjuna, at least in this cycle of the yugas. They appeared chronologically before Krishna and Arjuna. But it's one entity in two forms, although and in two different tattvas. In Arjuna, there's pastimes. very, very amazing pastimes between Krishna and Arjuna, like Arjuna marrying Krishna's sister, and how all of that happened. We narrated that earlier today or yesterday. So it's a pastime. So the two entities being one, the oneness, can have pastimes with one another. That's, is another dimension of the not easy to understand feature. So I can explain it to some extent, but it's quite beyond our grasp, the mind's grasp. How do you fit that one into your mind? It bounces. You can't get your mind around it. It doesn't fit. It's not the same, but there's some points of similarity to Mother Yasoda being unable to bind Krishna because he didn't want it. He didn't want to be bound. And then he withdrew his potencies and allowed other potencies so she could bind him. It's something like that. How there can be these two forms as if in a singular one entity. No, Shakti and Shaktiman, that's maybe a little easier to conceive of than Jiva and Shaktiman. But, Jiva is just another Shakti. There's his Sarup Shakti, that's Radha, and the Jiva Shakti, that's Jiva, or Arjuna. Or at least one such intimately bound living entity, bound to the will of Krishna. So he's a very special person, Arjuna. As we heard Parshuram say, you can't defeat him. There's no human being that can defeat him because he's as powerful as Krishna is. And yet, for Krishna's pastime purpose, when Arjuna was unable to check the dacoits that were harming the queens as they were going back to Hastinapur, the power was Krishna's power who can withdraw it and give it. So even such a powerful person who, as Arjuna, that can't be defeated, can be defeated by Krishna's withdrawing that potency from him, or Krishna giving the potency, and he can't be defeated. For me, it's to talk about it as one thing, but to really appreciate it, it's loving pastime. Krishna can give and withdraw his potencies as he wishes, as an act of loving pastime, and it all comes back to Rasavaisaha, which is a fundamental teaching from Madhurya Kandambini, that when Krishna appears, anyway, I'll say it. It's a philosophical explanation, but to me, it's more than just a philosophical explanation. It helps me to understand how things that are beyond our conception can be at least get an inkling of it. So when Krishna appears, this is the teaching. When Krishna appears, he does so by his sweet will. There's nothing that can cause Krishna to appear. There are circumstances where he appears, but he doesn't have to appear because he can have somebody else do or empower someone, or, he doesn't have to appear. He doesn't have to do anything. But when he appears, it's by his own will. Sva Icha. And there's multiple. I did a little research today and found multiple verses. Check it out if you want. Sva Icha. And there's right in the Bhagavatam verses, and they're always translated by his sweet will. He appears in different avatars and does amazing things because he has potencies. So when he appears, or when the sound vibration about his appearance is made, then it does two things. Two things. Very simply, two things. That one is the coverings become spiritualized. It's just in the same section of Taittiriya Upanishad, in language other than the language of Bhagavad Gita. The language of Bhagavad Gita, there's 8 coverings of the soul: earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. All 8 coverings of the soul are coverings, and the covering can become spiritualized by bhakti, or by the manifestation of Krishna's presence and the presence of his bhakti shakti in one's life. The matter can be spiritualized, and the soul can be restored to its original consciousness, this ananda, satchit ananda consciousness position. There's a happiness that comes when Krishna appears, or katha about Krishna enters one's ear. So similarly, this NaraNarayana/Rishi and Krishna Arjuna dynamic, because of the love, when Krishna appears, he appears by his own sweet will, because he wants to exchange rasa with his devotees. He wants his devotees, it's two ways. He wants to experience his rasa, which means an exchange of love with his devotees, and he wants to enliven his devotees with his presence and have them experience rasa in their constitutional position. He wants it. So he comes by his own sweet will. And then things happen, which is, so this is a rasa of this bondage of love between Arjuna and Krishna. They can go off and do different things at different times, at different places, and that doesn't change the rasa, because Arjuna is always thinking of Krishna. Krishna is always mindful of Arjuna and his well-being. So it's, the Leela is, there's the material life, and then there's the Leela, which is of the same quality as Krishna, and then to understand what's going on behind the Leela is the exchange of love between Krishna and his intimate devotees, like Arjuna. So that's how it's possible. On a rasa point of view, it's possible. And so because he's the Supreme Lord, he can do it. There's nothing he cannot do. He can do anything. He can appear always in one form, or he can appear in 2 forms. And it's a mystery. Now, how are we supposed to enter into that mystery? Hare Krishna. That's another mystery. But that's how our previous acharyas entered, through that primary means of deliverance for the sage. And they're able, because of that, they're able to not imagine, but experience and realize things that are beyond our reach. And they can reveal them to us. And they do. No, in different degrees. They reveal different things. But it's not just they're intelligent. They're empowered. They're engaged in an exchange of love with the source of all, everything. Raso Vaisaha. That's the background behind these not easy to understand things, for me at least. Krishna, so one more time. Krishna, Rasa Vaisaha. Very simple. He is Rasa. And when he comes, he does of his own sweet will. Swa Icha. And when he comes, the will is, he experiences and has his devotees experience Rasa. And that's that. In a nutshell, that's everything in spiritual life. And then there's details behind the essence. So Narayan is one of those details, but the essence is a loving exchange between the Supreme Lord and a jiva. In the case of NaraNarayan, known as Nara. In the case of Krishna Arjuna, known as Arjuna. And there's a very, very special, that's three varies, relationship between the two. And when we're hearing the exchange between the two, it's good to keep the background in mind, because there's things that happen, but there's the background behind those things that are happening. And it's the exchange of rasa between the two, because Krishna desires it for his devotee and for himself. It's two-way. That's a long answer for a not so easy to understand topic. Anything else? Yeah. Who? He's an avatar. Specifically, is he a Shaktivesh avatar? I'd have to check Laghu Bhagavatamrita to see if he's in the category of a Shaktivesh avatar. I don't think so. I think he's my understanding, without looking it up. My understanding is he's he's not empowered as a jiva may be empowered. That's commonly how the Shaktivesh avatar concept goes. A jiva that's empowered, although it's not always a jiva that's empowered. It can be Vishnu Tattva that's empowered. But what he's noted for is austerities. So my understanding is NaraNarayan, is an angsa, or part, like a living, part of the Supreme. Not an empowered, but a part of the Supreme. Not the Supreme in fullness, that's Krishna, but a part of the Supreme. Angsa of the Supreme. But I'll double check before part 2. Now, how does Rupa Goswami know all this? He is vastly learned in the scriptures, Nana Shastra Vacharanai Kanippuno. So he doesn't say things off the top of his head, but some things are not so clearly expressed, like this question. And, he has an explanation from realization, as well as, putting this scripture and that scripture statement together. He has that power given to him by Lord Chaitanya to understand these things. So we go to him as an authority. Anything else? I had a conversation today with a god brother, and he, in the course of the discussion, he described to me what he's up to, and kind of like hit me with his elbow, kind of like, when you give class, because it's recorded, you have to speak. You have to speak for the audience. But there are people, there's always going to be newer people in the audience, so you have to kind of keep it, at a level that they may have to reach to get it, but at least they can get it. And then there's others that they know all those things, and so he was asking specifically, when you do this Madhurya Kandamani class, is it going to be the first one or the second one? Should I listen to the recordings? Because I heard some of them. It's just like, it's a challenge. I'm just sharing with you. It's a challenge to be able, on the one hand, to speak to the audience, but also persons that have been around for a while, how to help them understand something that's a little deeper. It's a challenge of a speaker. And he quoted something Prabhupada said in relation to translations. There's two standard ways of, there's diversity, but two standard ways, directions. You get, when you translate something from Sanskrit, you can just be the literal. And the second way of translating is you don't neglect the literal, but the sweetness and the essence is also conveyed. And Prabhupada said, I like the second. And of course, there's other translators that do, as he did, and in some cases more so, like our Goswamis, because Prabhupada was speaking to the world. And our Goswamis were writing for learned Vaishnavas. So they didn't have to, they could just, no holds barred, they could just fly as high as a bird can fly. Bhaktisiddhanta's writing and speaking was like that. I'm just sharing with you that there's the challenge of addressing the audience and making relevant and relatable. At the same time, persons that want to go more deeply and satisfy those that want to go more deeply. It's a challenge for a speaker. Okay, thank you very much. Yes, you have something?
Yeah, I have a question.
Well, question, go ahead. Here's the microphone.
Yeah, so you narrated the story of Surya and then connecting the dots, ended up with Karna,
Yeah,
and then NaraNarayana, and then ended up with Krishna and Arjuna.
yeah.
But is this predetermined? Was that predetermined?
Predetermined.
Yeah, when Surya gave the boon to the demon,
No.
was it predetermined that it'll end
No.
up in Karna?
No, this is a nice discussion. Don't you? You hold the microphone. He's not going to do anything with it either. This was at a college. This was at, I forget which one. It's someplace in Dallas. One girl, we kind of got stuck because she kept going around and around and around. Her thing was that since God is omniscient, it's not exactly what you're asking, but it's kind of what you're asking. Since God is omniscient, does it mean that things are predetermined? And if there's, she didn't say it, but I said, where that train is going is we actually have no free will. If things are predetermined, we're just scripted. You can think that you're making some choices, but you're not really making any choices because you have no free will, because things are scripted. And it's not like that. We certainly have free, we're part and parcel of the Supreme, so we have free will. So there are choices being made along the way. And even if it's known ahead of time, you know, how's the plot going to end up? There's still free will involved. Even if you know what the outcome is in advance, how someone is, because they have a propensity, they're going to choose like this, and so forth. So back to your question. Was it predetermined? Was it an already set deal? And Surya was playing his part, and somebody else played their part, somebody else played their part, but it was just a set deal. It's just like it had to happen that way. So the error in that thinking is free will doesn't exist, or it's inoperative. You can think you have free will, but sorry, Charlie, no free will. It's just things are just, the river is moving. You're in a boat that's being moved by the waves of the river, and it's just destiny is going to play its course. You really don't have any free will. That's not the way it is. The persons are making choices, free will choices, and they move this direction, that direction, but there's free will choices being made. In this particular situation or any other situation. Just like we heard about the life of Maharaj Parikshit. And when the astrologers did his astrology chart, they got it. They nailed it, the whole thing. Does it mean that he didn't have any free will choices because it was all scripted? Same with this narration. He had his nature, yes. And the nature playing its way through Prakriti played out the way that it played out, but he was making free will choices. Same here. Okay. Prabhupada ki jai.